Right. It's not the first time we've done the bit where we sync up the audio recording by making a clap noise.
Yeah.
And then I've gone ow because I've slapped myself too hard.
Yeah.
I didn't do that this time.
Oh, good.
You'll be pleased to know I've learned my lesson.
I thought I heard an ow, so did you do something different this time?
I tell you what, right? I've got great news. I've got a new lesson to learn, right? If you're holding your phone and think, I can just slap one hand against my wrist, right? Make sure you don't have a bracelet made out of, like, solid chain on it. Quite unyielding. And it made even worse by the fact that I am a wrestler. Steel, very much like wood in the Buffyverse to vampires, affects us to a greater degree than the average human. I can be lightly tapped on the back with a steel chair, and my entire spinal column will shatter. Well, for me, actually, that's no great indicator I'm a wrestler. You could blow on my back and it will crumble. But the point is I've learned what not to do. So I can remember this moment when I invariably do it again.
Yeah, you will not have changed the behavior.
Oh, absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not. I'm a creature of habit. Sounds
Creature. You're a creature. It's
yeah. We'll just leave it at that. Yeah, I'm. I'd what you'd classify as sub-animal, and I'm not as a sex thing. Pure denigration. Well, that is a sex thing. The point is don't slap your bracelets, kids, unless they are slap bracelets, although really you slap with those, so don't slap those either. They've been through enough.
And if you're old enough to remember slap bracelets, maybe look into osteoporosis.
Don't. Something hit me earlier today. Oh no, it was last night. I no longer say to people, do you remember? When I bring up an old reference. Either they're as old as me and I just know they know, or I don't start with do you remember, I just start by explaining what it is. So Nightmare was this 80s show, right? It was a groundbreaking CITV production. In fact, I don't even know if CITV's still running. I might have to fucking explain that now. Yeah, I no longer say do you remember because most people I talk to now, like, especially in wrestling where, like, I'm 10 years older than everyone else, the answer's gonna be no.
I love whenever my wife comes to me and says, I was watching a YouTube video about, we'll use the example she used most recently, about shock sites, about the history of shock sites being performed by a 20-year-old. Who is younger than the shock sites. And it hurts.
I woke up this morning to the fun surprise that my knee hurt, but not the usual knee that hurts when it's cold.
Not the other knee.
That was today. The usual one that doesn't like the cold was fine, but the other one was bad, and I'm like, oh god, is it going to be a gamble now? I love the passage of time.
It's
great.
Good. It feels good.
You know what else is good? Podquisition. We're here. We talk about video games sometimes.
Yeah,
we do.
New video games sometimes.
New ones
will inevitably reach a point where someone doesn't ask if they remember those video games.
Oh no.
Because they will have been so old that they won't need to. Don't worry though, we won't have to worry about that. Because eventually, we just won't.
That's true.
I was about to say people will say it of us, but people already do. In fact, people are starting to come out of the do you remember phase for me. Fuck.
Who's played a video game this week they want to talk about?
Video games have been played.
Yeah.
Insistently.
I played more UFO 50.
Yeah, you did.
Of course I did. And it's still really good. I'm trying to think, what did I play this week? I've been playing a Tactics, which is kind of like Tetris meets a tactical strategy game. Not necessarily in the vein of Might and Magic Clash of Heroes, though you'd be forgiven for having that idea, the way it works is similar to Tetris. At intervals, pieces are added to the board. You have a grid of, I think it's 8x8, and you have soldier units of various types that are introduced on the left side of the screen, which is yours, and enemy units appear on the right. And at the intervals, they advance forward or perform their attacks depending on whether there's someone in front of them to attack. And you have ones that, just attack the square in front of them. You have archers that will fire the length if there's a target. And spear guys that'll do 2, shield guys that'll block things, sappers that'll explode. I've just reached them. They're a fucking nightmare. And it's this frantic sort of, you have like 4 seconds, 5 seconds in between introduction of new units to move them around. And it is a game that you kind of have to accept your lack of control over, because the amount of time that you have to think between actions is so short that you might be able to move 1 or 2 units a couple of spaces. And it becomes a matter of figuring out which units you're going to be able to deploy and keep in your back defensive ranks, because they do damage in specific ways that the opposing units that are coming in aren't equipped effectively to counter. It's really fast-paced, and I could see bouncing off of it because I did immediately, but I was listening to Eggplant, The Secret Lives of Video Games, who did their coverage of the episode a couple of weeks ago, and I gave it another shot, and it is nice as I have finished playing something else in UFO 50 that's frustrating me, and I am now going to go and play a round or 2 of a tactics, and maybe I'll win, but there's something about how random it feels at times, whether or not I'm going to be successful. Like, it doesn't feel, when I've won, necessarily that it's because I deployed great strategy. That helped, but there was luck involved. And likewise, when I lose, I can feel like, well, it wasn't entirely my fault. And that feels better than a lot of the other games where I can't make that claim.
Yeah.
So yeah, Tactics is a good little game inside of UFO 50 that I am enjoying as a palate cleanser. And other than that, I think, what was the game that was frustrating me? Oh, Rock On Island, which is the tower defense one. And again, that's just me needing to perfect every level. That's preventing me from making progress in it. But that is very good. And I've dug into some of the upgrades and found upgrades I didn't know existed. You can apparently improve your own abilities in combat. Oh, neat. And there's some, I figured out the economics of it a lot better, so it's coming along. But God, everything in this game is interesting. There's only one game I haven't played yet.
Yeah, which one's that?
Divers, which is labeled as an RPG. I have no idea what the gameplay is like.
I'm looking up an image of it now to remind myself which one this is. Oh, yes, I know which one we're talking about.
Yeah. I've also not been digging around in, like, the background metagames stuff as much, but I have been doing it in my own way. Part of why I'm playing all of these games to completion is to look at the credits on them, because some of the games actually do feature credits in, like, their attract mode, but for the most part, you do have to finish the games to see them, and it's fascinating to see the introduction of characters that I knew had to exist, and to see where they start to show up and the roles that they perform and the influence that they have is interesting. Like, you can see it in the credits in some places, how some characters have influenced the development by introducing other people in. It's neat. It's a very, very neat, well-considered package. I keep banging the drum, but there's so much going on in this. It's my game of the year. Like, I'm just calling it now.
I'm not surprised to hear that, and I'm glad that it has landed so well for you.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, speaking of stuff that might well end up quite high on my Game of the Year discussion this year, I finished playing through Mouthwashing.
Mm-hmm.
God, that game is effective.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm probably doing a video on that this Monday. The podcast that we didn't get to keep, we talked a fair bit about it. Obviously, we'll cede the floor to yourself. I just want to quickly say that as a disabled person, it is one of the most upsetting video games I've ever played, and well fucking played to that game as a result.
Yes. Thoughts I have had trying to stay spoiler light on this, because I think it is well worth checking out, if a bit intense. For a game that is only a couple of hours long, maybe, I am impressed at how much it gets done while still not feeling rushed. Like, there is a lot of the opening of that game that is taking its time to build atmosphere and to not rush to the thing.
Mm-hmm.
For a game that borrows heavily from inspirations of stuff like Alien, it borrows some of that sensibility of, you have to take time building the tone and the setting and where this is happening before you get into the truly unsettling stuff. I think this does that well. I agree with you, Steph. For anyone with specifically medical loss of autonomy phobias, this game is incredibly effective without indulging. It is very effectively evocative at unlocking very real fears that I have struggled with. It reminded me a lot of being in hospital after surgery and being given sleeping meds that I got the 1 in 1,000 side effect of, nope, you're going to be wide awake with sleep paralysis and night terrors shit going on, and you cannot move your body and you're seeing distressing shit. It brought me back to that. It is a thing I've only experienced once, and it gave me a lifelong fear of being in a medical setting where I cannot control my body and shit is bad. And this captures that fucking terrifyingly, beautifully, effectively.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
And it goes over multiple facets of it.
Yes.
And that's, by the way, just one facet of the game overall.
Yes. It is about so many other things as well.
The theme of being trapped runs so much through it in many different ways, and then there are traps within the traps, and the bit that haunted me the most was, similar to yourself, as someone who is disabled and has dealt with long-term chronic pain and has been at the mercy of caregivers who at times did not treat me kindly. I have so many phobias of things in that game, but like you say, it's not exploitative or lurid. It's just fucking scary.
Even in the points of this game where it feels like it is doing that early slow build, the themes are already there in really effective, reinforcing ways for what comes later. Like, so many of the ways that this game sort of puts you in positions of being afraid of being trapped with or at the expense of others whose actions you cannot control.
It's interesting how the game explores the idea of being trapped and unable to escape from so many different perspectives. Because I didn't play it. My wife Linda played. I watched the whole run. And when she played it, for her, the impactful aspect of it was not the disabled character's perspective, but the medic character's perspective. And her story and her being trapped in that environment and situation resonated much more with her for reasons that will probably be obvious. And it wasn't that the disabled elements were overlooked or anything. It's just if you are capable of feeling confined and powerless, this game can show that to you in a way that resonates with you.
it has enough examples of the theme it's trying to get that if it's gonna be able to surface it out of you, it'll find a way.
Yeah.
Other little touches about it I think are really interesting. I like that so many of the later examples of you being trapped because of actions not inside your control are set off by an action that is mechanically within your control as a player.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a really interesting way to set that up. I think it does a really good job of not hiding the fact that shit is gonna get worse, and going, it's not gonna get worse in this moment, but I can see how much worse it's gonna get and how quickly it's probably gonna happen because there are very real things going on, and I know from real life how bad this shit's gonna get based on what's happened. There is a point where someone drinks some mouthwash for the first time where I'm like, well, this is not going to go well very quickly. This is very quickly going to go very badly. But, like, so much of it is, even before things are actively going wrong in the moment, you can see that I am stuck here and I know what's going to go wrong and I know that I can't not be here when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very effective at that. God, it's a good game.
It's really good.
It's a horror masterpiece. It truly is. You know, we talked about the many ways it has traps in it, and it's important to note what you noted, Conrad, in that whatever part of that game resonates most with you doesn't undo or minimize the other parts.
No.
Mm-hmm.
The point is, there are so many facets to the one central theme, and themes within those that speaks to... there's a reason why the audience, the community that has built up around this game is so entrenched in it, because this game speaks to people in many different ways, and none of them comfortable, but all of them brilliant and masterfully done.
It knows the one thing it wants you to find scary, and it's not afraid to just be about the one thing that it wants you to find scary, and to really explore the ways that, even if you don't think that's going to scare you, it might still do. Damn good game.
Damn good game.
What about you, Steph? What you been playing this week?
Right. Aside from the fact that I do have to replay Mouthwashing for Monday's video, which it's weird how I could say that is an absolute 10 out of 10. There's no way it's not going to be in the Jimquisition Awards game, and I'm sort of not looking forward to playing it again.
Yeah.
Not because it's not good, but because you really do need to steel yourself.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I've played 2 games. One of them we've talked about before, but VIII's Vigil, the survival map that came from the Bone Razor Minions studio. Been playing some of that again. It's had some updates, because it's still in early access, so more characters to play, more enemies, just a fair bit of more. It's still really good. They've added some really clever characters and stuff as well. One of them is shameless as all fuck. It's called Vampire Survivor, where in order to evolve weapons in VIII's Vigil, you have 2 maxed out weapons of the same type and combine them. The Vampire Survivor class is unique in that it uses a passive item, like in Vampire Survivors. And in between every stage, you are given a choice of 3 cards, and you got to pick one. The conditions on them both can be very rewarding and very punitive, but stylistically, they're the Arcana cards from Vampire Survivors. So, very cute and shameless. Yeah, it's still really fucking good. It still had its hooks in me. I did learn a few minutes before hitting live on a live stream of it that I've been calling it Void Sigil for months. And it's Void's Vigil. And for some reason, I can't move past it. I don't know why. I've done dumber things. I've thought stupider things. But for some reason, I am distraught that I've been calling it Void Sigil. It's not. It's Void's Vigil. Or is it Void Sigil? I've forgotten.
No, it's Void's Vigil.
Void's Vigil. It's good.
VV.
VV. Yeah, I've done at least one run with all of the current classes I've unlocked. I will say one thing it could not maybe do is have options in shops and other areas that are greyed out because you haven't unlocked the class to which it pertains. This is especially annoying on the Mimic class, which after every stage, you can choose an ability from another class. And that game doesn't care if the 3 choices it gives you, or 4, one of them, are all from classes you've not unlocked yet, so you can't pick one at all. It's just greyed out question marks. That happened to me on a stream and I was livid, because that's the point of the class. You know, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it has personally quite annoyed me. Because it just takes up space in shops as well. It's like, here's a greyed out thing that you can't have because it's unlocked after you unlock this thing. I'm like, yeah. That's the noise I make, and I'm right to do it. But other than that, yeah. Every now and then I get really fucking annoyed with it because it's so harsh. It's not that it's like really super duper hard. It's just your health can go from like travelled all the way down from top to bottom of the screen to nothing in a second. Sometimes a run will end and I'm just like, what the? I blinked! I literally blinked! But it's fucking great. It really is good. I'm looking forward to the full thing. That's
Nice.
Vigil for you.
Are you playing anything else this week, Conrad?
No. I mean, briefly, it's satisfactory. I've gotten access to nuclear power, and so I've had to completely rebuild everything from the ground up. So I'm doing that. Yeah.
So I've got another thing on my list for this week that is a thing I can talk about as someone that owns one of those professional PlayStation 5s. Not a standard one, a professional PlayStation 5. You remember how a couple of weeks ago I talked about the fact that there was this weird experience where one of the games I played on PS5 Pro actively looked worse than the non-Pro version?
Yeah.
I talked about this with Silent Hill 2. Mm-hmm. It was having weird visual glitches and stuff, like the kind of visual bugs where it's like, I would be concerned this might cause sensitivity issues for someone, that floor's doing weird shit. It's not the only game that looks worse on the Pro. The Pro's having some teething troubles. The list is growing. We can now add to that list of games Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Star Wars Outlaws, and Avatar Frontiers of Tomorrow, the Ubisoft Avatar open world game that happened.
Is that the one Ubisoft have closed down?
It's not the one they've closed down, right. I don't think.
Fucking
no,
dickheads.
But they have done some shitty old closures. But yeah, we've got a growing list of games that actively look worse on the Pro.
Amazing.
And like, I wanted to talk about this because having played around with the thing and knowing somewhat how it works, I think I can see what's going on, and I think it's worth talking about before this direction becomes the future of console designs. The big feature that a lot of these games are using to take advantage of the PS5 Pro is something called PSSR, PlayStation Super Spectral Resolution. And what that basically is a proprietary name for AI upscaling of visuals, where game will try and make visuals look better. It'll take whatever number of pixels there is and try and make it look like a higher number of pixels. In some games, that tech is working pretty well. But it is not a just turn it on and assume it will work correctly kind of feature. It is a feature that, because it is AI, because it is not human curated, is going to interact differently with different games depending on how they're visually set up. And the problem that seems to be happening, my best guess is, publishers are not giving teams a lot of time or money to make these Pro-enhanced ports. Because the number of people who own the Pro is not huge. The number of people who are going to buy your game because it's got a Pro patch is not huge. It seems like a lot of this is throw on PSSR support to, like, let it go 60 FPS but bump it up to 4K, and then not have the amount of time you really need to QA that and make sure that it's working properly. And it's leading to games having effects where, like, lighting is doing weird things. A lot of it is, like, foliage weirdly shimmering, looking like it's sparkling when it shouldn't be. And the way that they fixed this in Silent Hill 2 Remake, which they have done now, is that they just took the PSSR support out. They took PlayStation's fancy new upscaler and just turned it off. And it fixed the problem. And the game looks better, because, like, here's the thing. You didn't need to use the AI upscaling tech to make that game look better, because Silent Hill 2 was a game that had dynamic resolution scaling, meaning that it would lower the resolution if it needed to keep its frame rate targets. Meaning, if you run it on a more powerful machine, it will just run at higher resolutions, because it's got the headroom to do that. They didn't need to put PSSR in, but they did, and it broke the game, and they didn't notice. I don't know how long it's going to be before devs stop making this mistake, but there's a number of devs, particularly of open-world experiences, who seem to be turning on this setting and not giving their teams the time and money required to do proper QA, and not noticing that it's turning on weird visual artifacts that actively make their games look worse. You know what game doesn't look worse on PS5 Pro? Horizon Forbidden West, which doesn't use PSSR. The one where they paid the devs of that game to go in and make new high-quality art assets and put them in, rather than getting an AI to try and do it. And it looks fucking great. It's the best PS5 Pro game I've played so far in terms of visuals.
And I'm glad that the industry is going to learn a lesson from that.
You would hope, but I don't have faith. It should tell the industry something that the best-looking game on Pro right now is the one that doesn't use the AI tech, and the ones that are having the biggest problems are the ones that relied on the AI tech and didn't think maybe a human should look this over.
It does feel, though, that the cost-benefit analysis, like a lot of these console-specific features, for a third party to go to the extra effort to use a feature that is only going to apply to a minority of their users. And now we're talking about a minority of a minority, because we are, talking about the higher end of the same platform, as opposed to just these are different platforms with some slightly different features, and maybe I won't do touch support because 2/3 of the consoles that I'm going to be on don't have it. Now you're narrowing that even further. And yeah, if I wasn't Sony, I wouldn't do it. And even if I was Sony, now looking at the result, maybe I wouldn't do this.
I mean, that's the thing, is like, why would you do it at this point when you've seen that sometimes turning on that button makes your game look worse?
And we don't know also some of the more backroom stuff that goes on with regards to this. And when you were talking about them shutting it off, my immediate thought was, well, I wonder what the impact on the certification process is with regards to these features. Because PlayStation's cert process, at least when I had experience with it, was very thorough and very specific and ruthless at times. And that's not to say that exceptions couldn't be made and they couldn't be negotiated with, and problems couldn't find resolution and compromise, but that process is harsh, and for something so optional as this, but is clearly something that Sony would want people to do.
The other thing is, I don't know how optional it is, because there were leaked documents in the run-up to the Pro being announced of, developer documentation that did seem to suggest there was going to be a cut-off date, after which, if you want to bring your game to PlayStation 5, you have to have a build for the Pro as well.
Yeah.
And it's certainly not an a problem that is impacting every game that uses the tech, but developers need to be aware it's not a magic switch you can turn on and just trust it won't fuck stuff up. Because as we saw with the GTA Remastered trilogy, you trust AI to make your game visuals look better, and sometimes it'll just break shit. It is a weird situation for sure.
Yeah.
What about you, Steph? You been playing anything else?
The only other real main one is, I think it's 8, Romance of the Three Kingdoms 8 Remake, which
that appears to be an 8 you've put in chat.
Yeah, could be 7. Pretty sure it's 8. I should have checked. I was literally playing it like for 2 hours before we recorded. I could have looked any time.
I was about to volunteer to look it up for you, but then I realised I would look at screenshots and I wouldn't know which one you'd played.
You wouldn't fucking know. I don't even know if I've played this. And I've played this. This is the kind of game you wouldn't think that I would play, except for the fact that it is Romance of the Three Kingdoms, and therefore good enough. So this is a strategy simulation game, and Tecmo Koei do it, and they've been doing it since the NES days. There's like 14 of them now or something. And 8 is the only one I played. It came out on the PS2 in like the year 2000 or something. Yeah, they brought out a remake. It's got mixed reviews on Steam. People don't seem all that fond of it. I've looked at some of the reviews, and the thing is it's so long ago, and it's so out of my usual wheelhouse that I don't know. I don't know what's bad about it, or what's good. But I've suddenly gotten absorbed into it again. Because I got obsessed with it when I played it 24 years ago as well. And part of what makes it that is, unlike a lot of strategy games or simulation games, you just do whatever. Like, you can choose to be, like, one of the big, like, rulers of the Three Kingdoms period. Like, in ancient China, you could be, Liu Bei or Cao Cao, like, one of the big movers and shakers. You can be the lowliest soldier in one of their armies, or in none of their armies, and it's just a month-to-month thing, and it's really sort of low on visuals and assets and stuff. You're just in whatever town, whatever province, rather, in ancient China, and there's a town, and you can do different things. You build relationships with other characters, and there's, fucking hundreds and hundreds, because it's Three Kingdoms. You strengthen your reputation among different things. You can spend ages and ages without ever getting involved in the battle side of things. There's a whole system for debating with other officers. There's one for dueling one-on-one. There's the actual strategic stuff, which I can't remember how that went, and I've not gotten round to it in this yet. Yeah, it's a lot of menus. It's a lot of the stuff I don't normally like, but it's so freeform that I think that's what has always kept me sort of interested in. Well, obviously not interested enough to pick it up in 24 years, but interested then and now. Like, having it on the Steam Deck, nice. A nice little thing. It did make me realise that a lot of simulation games are basically neurodivergent simulators, because I sat here and I thought, who gets tired and runs out of their, quote-unquote action points by talking to 3 people a month? Oh, me. So yeah, I think, I don't know how many medieval badass Chinese generals were autistic, but more than a couple, I should wager. All of them in this. It's not a game I could recommend to anyone I know. There's no one I know in my my personal life who'd be into this. And I'm only the only hook for me is I've been into Dynasty Warriors again a lot lately. Well, Dynasty Warriors 8, and thinking a lot about that period of history, because I did develop a genuine fascination for it when I first got into Dynasty Warriors. I read all of Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which for me is amazing. With my existing attention span and the fact that it's boring as fuck for the most part, there are some cool bits. But yeah, it's got the potential to have hours and hours and hours and hours of content, or it can bore you in 10 minutes. Couldn't recommend it to anyone, but to the right person, solid stuff. But maybe more deep-seated fans of the series would recommend any of the other ones over this, because like I say, some people, or quite a few people, do not care for this remake. And that's about it.
Yeah. The only other thing I've really been playing about with is, after many months of waiting for it to arrive, I now have a 3DS capture kit, so I can stream 3DS games without emulating them.
Oh, nice.
Meaning that I can get back to doing shiny hunting in Pokemon on the 3DS games, but do it on stream, and still then move those Pokemon to my collection on Switch at some point.
I've been thinking about looking up stuff like that for, like, the PS Vita or something. It's got to be possible for all of them, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
for sure. Like, for that Capture 3DS, I had to wait a while for it to show up, because there's, like, one person in the UK that does them, but, like, it eventually showed up, and now it's just a USB cable, and my 3DS mirrors on OBS.
Didn't the Vita have, like, an output?
So, the Vita... The thing to do would probably be to just Google a Vita TV. The thing that was a Vita that was just a box that
With
you
an
put Vita
HDMI
games
port,
on
yeah.
and add an HDMI out,
Yeah.
and you just play it with a PlayStation controller.
Oh, boy, I bet those are moddable.
I imagine so, probably. But yes, now that I have my Capture 3DS set up, I was like, okay, I should remind myself where I was last time I was shiny hunting in the 3DS Pokemon games, because I would wager it's been about 5 years, because the last 5 years or so I've been doing a lot of shiny hunting in the Switch games, and I finally finished all the shiny hunting in those and have come back to the 3DS ones. I was trying to remember what I was up to, and I worked it out. Here is what I've worked out. I was trying to shiny hunt a Pokemon called Type Null. I'd gotten invested enough in this shiny hunt that I'd, like, worked out a place where I could do this shiny hunt faster. The usual place where you're given this Pokemon is, like, at the end of a 40-second long cutscene, and most people trying to reset for this shiny one load up their save, wait through 40 seconds of cutscene, see if it's shiny, reset. I worked out a better way. If my entire team of Pokemon and all 32 of my boxes in my PC were full, they couldn't give me the Pokemon then and had to go somewhere else. And when I found them in a different place, they would just give it to me straight away, so I could save 40 seconds every reset cycle. I'd, like, done all this effort. And at some point, I apparently had a bad day and said, fuck it, and I just accepted a non-shiny one and saved the game and apparently I just gave up on that shiny hunt. And I don't know what kind of bad day I was having, because usually I'm having a bad day, sit and repeatedly restart my 3DS waiting to see if a Pokemon's shiny, is exactly the way I fix having had a bad day. So I've now unlocked the mystery of what kind of bad day was I having, that shiny hunting was not the solution. In fact, I said, no, I won't do this shiny hunt. Fuck you.
Huh.
So, that's a mystery I will probably never answer, but that has brought me some curiosity the last day or so. But yeah, that's everything I've played this week. Shall we talk about a couple of newsy bits?
Sure.
Before we do, Steph, you've got to head off for some minutes, right?
I got to fuck off. Yeah, I'm going to leave.
Yeah, fuck off.
Yeah, all right, fine, I will. I'm off. Just quickly, do the shilling out of the way. Follow me on Blue Sky, Commander Sterling, same name on Instagram. I Twitch stream whenever I can at twitch.tv/Jim Sterling. My next wrestling date is the 14th, I want to say. I think that's a Sunday or the 15th. It's the Sunday of that. That's in Salford, Manchester. That's Pinfall Pro Wrestling. I will also be in Leeds for True Grit once again on January the 11th. My first time back there since the rather legendary no DQ match with Priscilla. And I will be back at Tidal Wrestling, where I am now a full dyed-in-the-wool heel. I shall be henceforth referring to myself there as the preeminent, imminent emissary of enmity. I've got so much alliteration. That's January 18th. I will be part of their all-women's show. I've heard who my opponent is, and it's one of my classics. We've never had it the other way around in terms of audience response, but hey. That's that. Thank you all so much for being with me, and I shall leave you with Conrad and Laura.
Woo!
Yeah.
Conrad, do you want to start off by talking about this Pokemon Go story?
Well, yeah, we didn't talk about it last week, and probably just past. It's kind of a big story, and we tend to only focus on the things that don't break out into the mainstream.
It's a big story, but one of those big stories that's easy to just sort of brush off as, we kind of all knew this, right? But
Yeah.
it's bigger than that thought of brushing off would say.
Right. So it has finally come out because I guess Niantic announced it that they have what do they call it?
A large geospatial model.
A geospatial model. That's what it is. Yes.
An LGM.
Yeah. Basically, Niantic has been using Pokemon Go among all of its games, to collect training data. And the result is they're like, we can map everything now.
Yeah, so I want to specify, because I've seen a lot of people who have assumed this is the thing that I think a lot of people assumed was happening, which is you walking around and the map data that says where you're walking is what is being tracked here. There is a bigger thing that is a feature that got introduced after I stopped playing, but I am aware of as a feature, that is the bigger part of this, which is you can go to locations that are marked as gyms or Pokestops in the real world, and you would start getting in-game rewards for basically scanning them with your phone camera and, like, taking photos from different angles, basically creating 3D model image composites of various locations around the world. And that modeling data for these real-world locations is a big part of what this is.
Yeah. And I can understand why people wouldn't have given any consideration to the implications of taking a photograph of a Pokemon or setting a Pokemon somewhere in a place and encouraging other people to use their camera to engage with it in AI, and that data being I can see why people wouldn't have crossed their minds, which is what makes it kind of insidious. The reward structure being in place for the acquisition of this data. And it's not just mapping, it's environmental data. It's not just the information you would get from a satellite and from people brushing up against the edges of things. We're talking entrances and egresses of all kinds.
What are the physical layout properties of these real world locations paired with the physical usage data of how people navigate around them and in and out of them?
Yes, and that data in combination with data that we know companies like Google have been collecting over the years, using positional tracking to determine the interior layout of buildings. All of this just sort of existing in a marketplace introduces so many security risks. It is shocking. Absolutely shocking. And this data at this level feels like the sort of thing that can only be deployed by the state and military, which...
Yeah.
I mean, that's bad. That's bad no matter where you are.
There is realistically no other buyer that would be interested in that kind of specific data.
At least not... Yeah, well... no, I could think of some people who might be interested in some of that very specific data for... but I can't think of a good use for it. Oh, now hang on. I did find one. I thought of one decent use: volunteer fire departments.
Okay, yes. Cool.
That's the one. I welcome any other examples of this data being used for good. So yeah, frightening and collected and accumulated and for sale. And we have I don't want to victim blame, but we did it to ourselves by not fostering an environment where people understand the implications of the technology that they use.
Yep. Yeah. There's not a lot on the newsy list this week. There's one that I have found just amusing, because this is the continued story of Nintendo finding it seemingly impossible to keep under wraps what they're working on. This week we had screen protectors and cases for the Switch 2 seemingly starting to go on sale on AliExpress and similar Chinese wholesale websites.
Well, I would be very careful, everybody, when it comes to like making purchases about this, because we have no confirmation that Nintendo is working on a Switch 2 at all. Like,
yeah. Well, we know they're working on something that they will announce sometime in the next 3 months. Like, here's the thing. I would usually be skeptical. I would usually be like, this is probably based on best guess predictions and trying to, like, be first out the door market-wise. The thing that intrigues me is that the case designs all have the same thing in common, which is that they protrude more at the top back of them, which would suggest larger, probably analog triggers rather than digital, like triggers with more of a travel distance.
Mm-hmm.
All of the third-party cases that are popping up have space for more where the trigger would be. And I'm like, this doesn't feel like you're just slapping a logo on existing Switch cases. It feels like you know some measurements going on. Then there was video that seems to be from a factory worker just showing partially assembled Switch 2s that started floating about this week. And still Nintendo has said not a word.
And you know what? I know why they haven't said a word.
I'm curious, because I have a theory about it.
I've got a theory as to why they haven't said a word. Yeah, they don't want to destroy Switch 1 purchases this holiday season. They want to maintain, want to keep, because they're not announcing. Yeah. It's not going to be available for sale during the biggest retail quarter. So
you're not wrong. I think there is an additional thing that I suspect is going on, which is Trump has announced that he is going to start levying some tariffs. Some tariffs that are probably going to impact the price of this thing when it releases next year.
And they don't want to announce pricing.
Yeah. I think not wanting to announce pricing until they know whether Trump is going to back down on those tariffs or not. Because if he sets those tariffs where he is threatening to, that's going to add probably $50, $60 to the price of this thing specifically in the United States. And I think Nintendo is hesitant and waiting to see what he does.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is absolutely a reason for the delay. I would question how much that would have factored into the calculus if they weren't already aiming for a 2025 release. We've been talking about this for so long and expecting them to announce it all year. And I think a lot of people, myself included, kind of had an expectation that there would be Switch 2 hardware available for sale for Christmas.
I was not suspecting it to be on sale that early. I think they're going to ultimately follow a very similar trajectory to what they did with the original, which was in October they did like a trailer to show here's the concept. Don't need to do that this time around. It's basically the same but shinier. Right. In January, do a presentation, show off some of the launch games, show off the graphics, say what the price and date is. Like March, April, release it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's probably the trajectory, but it is fascinating watching how many, like, things that are not Nintendo messaging are getting out ahead of it.
Yes, it is.
I mean, we could probably leave it there for this week, I reckon.
Yeah? All right. Well, but because we are leaving people, and you know they want more. They always want more.
They always do.
Laura, you do more.
I do, yeah.
Where can they find that more?
I can find that more at Laura K. Buzz in all of the various places you would find stuff. Laura K. Buzz on Patreon, that's the one that pays the bills. As little as $1 a month over there allows me to keep doing all the stuff I do. Laura K. Buzz on Twitch. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays I do Twitch streaming over there in the evenings. Laura K. Buzz on YouTube, you can check out all of the video stuff I am putting out. I am currently preparing for end of the year kind of content, so look forward to, I think next week there's going to be a video that is the entire last year in video game accessibility shoved into one video. If you want to just a recap of, hey, what happened while I wasn't paying attention? What should I know about that bit of the industry? So look forward to that. What about you, Conrad? Where are you at on the internet?
Oh, you can find me at Conrad Zimmerman on Blue Sky. You can hang out with me on Twitch at twitch.tv/thatconradzimmerman. I stream on Sundays, Mondays, and Tuesdays. You can buy anti-capitalist propaganda that I make at mercenarycreative.com, and everything that I do online gets supported through Patreon. at patreon.com/fistshark. And Laura, do you know who else has a Patreon?
Who?
It's Stephanie Sterling.
Oh.
It's patreon.com/Jimquisition. Go support the show because it supports this show and the video series and the written reviews at thejimquisition.com. Gotta have that the.
Mm-hmm.
Catch Steph at Pinfall Pro Wrestling on December 15th. And I think that's us.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. All right.
Bye.
Bye.